right, hello, my brothers and sisters. I hope that you're having a wonderful day today. And if your day isn't going well so far, well, I hope that this time we'll spend together will bring some light to your day and begin to turn some things around for you. Today, we're going to explore some ideas related to intentional relationship building and how we can intentionally build relationships through meaningful conversations. Now, when I mention meaningful conversations, I'm not just talking about, those candlelit dinners with that special someone, although those scenarios would probably apply to what we'll talk about today too. I'm talking today about conversations like catching up with a friend over a coffee or a meal, meeting up with your family for a family dinner, talking to a cousin who happens to sit next to you at a family gathering, or even just driving in the car with a friend or family member. And one tool that we can leverage in these scenarios to intentionally build relationships is the tool of conversation, and particularly meaningful conversations. And the key word here is meaningful. Okay, meaningful indicates that we are discussing something of value or weight. And that doesn't mean we need to talk about something serious or sorrowful, but it generally means that we are talking about something that we care about or something that the person we are talking to cares about. So in other words, the thing we're talking about means something to me or it means something to them, the person that I'm talking to. So how do we talk about things that we care about or things that the person we are talking to cares about? So today we're going to talk about two methods for doing this. Okay, method one is to be willing to go there first. And I think I heard of this idea on a Charisma on Demand YouTube video. But before I explain what going there first means, let's play out a scenario that demonstrates this method in practice. Okay, so imagine that you're catching up with a friend over some coffee or boba, if that's your thing. You both sit down with your drinks and your friend opens the conversation with, "So, how are you doing?" The age-old question, right? And you, following what most people might do in a situation like this, might respond something along the lines of, "I'm doing pretty good. How about you?" And that response in turn will probably get you a response like, "I'm doing pretty good too. How's work?" And that kind of pattern might continue over and over for the remainder of the conversation, right? So let's try something different. Okay, imagine it's the same scenario. You meet up with your friend for some coffee or boba. You both sit down and your friend opens the conversation with the same line. "So, how are you doing?" And this time, you respond with something like, "I'm honestly doing okay. Things have been a bit busy at work since I've taken on a new role, but I'm really enjoying the new challenges my team is solving. It was a bit of a leap, actually a bit scary in the moment for me to take on the role in the first place, but I'm so glad that I made the change so that I can grow my skills." So what was different, right, about that approach? I would call it, the method, right? You went there first. And so there in this context refers to a place of meaning. So in other words, you were willing to be a little more vulnerable first. Or to use the language we're leveraging in this chat, you were willing to talk about something meaningful to you first. And of course, depending on the depth of your relationship with whoever you're talking to, you might want to vary the level of vulnerability that you are, or the level of vulnerability you share with them, I guess. So for example, you might not want to share the deepest parts of your heart with a stranger you just met. Although, hey, if that's what you feel like to do, that's your choice to make. But the point is, when you're willing to go there first, more times than not, the person you're talking to will follow you to that place. They might ask you more about what's on your mind, or they might share something that's meaningful to them, or something that resonated to them about what you just shared with them. So ultimately, what that results in are more conversations where you are talking about topics and matters that mean something to you and whoever you're talking to. And doing that, in turn, allows you to intentionally build relationships where you know more and more of what's on the heart of whoever you're talking to. Okay, so that was method one, being willing to go there first. Okay, the second method we'll talk about today is intentionally preparing for your conversations. Okay, so what this looks like, and I'm really serious about this, is that you're going to block out some time. This typically takes about like 2 to 3 hours or so per conversation. And what you do in that block of time is write out line by line how you want the conversation to go. Now, hang on here. So once you feel like you've done that, it's in a good place, go ahead and print it out. If you can, you put in a 3-ring binder, that's even better. The more official and formal it is, that's the best. It's basically a script, really. And then when you meet up with whoever it is you'll be having a conversation with, and this is the key, at the first moment of greeting, without saying a word, you're going to hand the script to the other person, flip to the first page where your conversation will begin. You point to the script, you nod knowingly, like this is all standard protocol. Okay, and if they act confused or they try to say anything that's not at all what you've written, you just shake the script in your hand in an annoyed fashion. You point to the script and nod to indicate it's their turn to continue. Okay, it's pretty simple technique, really. Okay, enough nonsense. So what do we actually mean when we talk about intentionally preparing for your conversations? Okay, at its core, intentionally preparing for your conversation is just taking some time prior to your conversation to think through a couple questions that, when asked in your conversation, will make your conversation more meaningful. So the specific length of time you might need for preparing this way might change depending on what topic you want to discuss or how serious a conversation might be. But in general, having a couple questions ready in your back pocket is a useful tool. So I find that for myself, doing this just takes a couple minutes, like 2 to 3 minutes. And I hear some of you, yes, I can hear you through the screen saying, well, Brother Joseph, what about the wonder, beauty, joy, and all that is good in that which is spontaneous conversation? And to those brothers and sisters, I say, I hear you, and I acknowledge that there is spontaneity involved in conversations. So yes, we should be open to that spontaneity, depending on where the conversation goes. And I add on to that what we're discussing are just some intentional questions you can have in your proverbial back pocket that you can leverage to make your conversations more meaningful. So let's say you have your couple minutes blocked out before you meet with this person. What are some questions, what questions are going to help you figure out meaningful questions to ask? So here are 2 that might help get you started. Okay, the first is, what are some topics that come to mind when I think of them? And the second is, what are some things we talked about last time that I want to check up on? Okay, let me give you an example. So I recently spent some time with my in-laws, including my brother-in-law. Using these general questions to guide my thinking, I came up with the following questions to ask him. Okay, so for a topic that came to mind, he's a math major and he teaches mathematics. So one question that came up for him was, what's a math topic you learned about recently, and why is it important? And then for something we talked about last time that I wanted to check up on or follow up on, I asked him, how are your assignments going for school? And I did end up asking both those questions, actually, and we had a great conversation. I even learned that some tribes have historically used baboon bones for counting things, right? Who would have known? Anyways, here are some nuances you'll want to keep in mind with this method. Okay, so the first is, when thinking about the topic, I find that you don't just want to be asking about the same topic every time, because that's going to make your conversations feel robotic and it's going to make you feel really predictable, which is good in some cases, but most of the time you don't want to just be asking about the same thing. And so for thinking about topics, you might just want to think about what you know is going on in their life at the current time and ask them a question around that. So for example, instead of asking about math, I might have asked my brother-in-law something like, I remember that you're finishing up fall quarter at school right now, right? What were some of your favorite moments from the quarter? Or in other words, you may just ask 2 types of questions related to something you're following up on, just something that's going on in their life. Okay, and I guess the same kind of goes for following up on prior topics. So you don't just want to be following up on the same thing every time, right? Especially if whoever you're talking to is working on a long-term project, right? In those cases, you might want to ask a more nuanced question to explore a topic deeper. Okay, so for example, for my brother-in-law, instead of asking him how assignments are going, I might ask him something like, I remember last time we had a chat that you were preparing a lesson plan for the class. Right? How did that assignment end up going? What did you learn through preparing for it? So that's method 2, intentionally preparing for your conversations. And so to recap what we discussed today, let's remember a couple things. So first is meaningful conversations take place when we have conversations around topics and matters that we care about and topics and matters that whoever we're talking to cares about. Second, being willing to go there first and intentionally preparing for our conversations can increase the likelihood that we have a meaningful conversation. So my brothers and sisters, my hope in discussing these thoughts with you is to get us all thinking about how we can intentionally have those meaningful conversations and in turn, continue to intentionally build the relationships that we really care about in our lives. And with that, I will chat with you all next time. God bless.